Hey guys, welcome to What is What. This is a segment for Generational Nora's podcast, Chasing Hope, and it's called What is What because a lot of you guys do not know what's going on in politics, who's running, what is happening, etc. So my political science degree is kind of going to waste, so I decided I would bring an expert on what's happening. Mana. Hi.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you so much for coming. So I had a few questions on what is going on, who's running, and why should people vote this election?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to this discussion, and hopefully, whoever watches this video will be motivated, will be empowered to go out and vote on November 5th. Tuesday, their local polling from, I think, typically polling location run from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So we are in a pretty complicated election cycle right now for many in our community. And I am running for House Representative for District 95, which is part of Lewiston. And my district, for just to give people a rough estimate and visual, starts from Kennedy Park, those who are familiar with downtown Lewiston, and then it ends right on exit 85. So it's pretty sizable district, but still, there's 3 other districts within Lewiston that are represented by other House members, and then we have our Senator Peggy, and all of us are on the ballot this year. The House and both House and Senate in the state of Maine is a 2-year term, and then we run re-election again. And then obviously, I think to nobody's surprise, or to nobody's surprise. The presidential election is also happening, which is often tend to suck the air out of local conversation and state conversation. But and one of the reasons why I'm actually really grateful that we're having this conversation today, because if nothing else, I think I understand that the presidential can be very complicated a conversation for some folks, but state and local is just as important, if not more, I would argue.
Because you just introduced yourself and told us what you're running for, but why'd you run? Why are you running? Why should people care about these seats, and is someone that looks like you, why is it important to have someone there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think politics is personal, and I think all of us come to understand that different stage in our lives. Mm-hmm. And for me, I came to that realization pretty early on in my development as I was growing in this country, just because I became a caregiver early on in life for my mom, and I became quite aware how disrupting and disturbing the healthcare system is for the folks in our community, especially those who have pre-existing conditions and the likes. So that quickly made me realize how much ensuring the system in place should be of the service of the people than anything else. And now, even understanding that, I still didn't have any desire to run for office, quite frankly. So when I got back from college, I was still doing a lot of just behind the scene community work. I work in the DA office with my full-time gig, but when I had any time or energy outside of my job, I was working within the community to honestly understand my own community and the needs it has, but also just give back in a way that I could. And on that, I think you get introduced and exposed to the needs of your people. And I don't think you have the front seat row to that, and I don't have to tell you about it. But I think you quickly realize the importance of making sure that we have funding for our schools. You have quickly realized the importance of making sure that folks who are new to our country, new to our state, have the resources to be able to start a successful life when they get here, right? Making sure that our folks who are unhoused have a pathway to becoming housed, and that they're off the street. Maine is an incredibly beautiful state, but it's also a really cold state, and we have to make sure that folks are not freezing outside, right? Mental health resources are in place so that folks can access them when they need. Substance use is another issue that our community experiences, right? And making sure that the resource, again, is in the right place. But resources aren't they don't just come about. People actually have to get together and decide where those resources go, and making sure that people who have the exposure and the first-hand knowledge and experience are on those leadership positions is going to matter.
Yeah.
Right? When we're talking about budget, large budget at the state level, for example, we're talking about which issue is not because one issue is more important than others, but knowledge and first-hand experience gives you the understanding, the urgency of an issue, the urgency of what's impacting your community, and you're more likely to fight like hell, quite frankly, for that issue, and to make sure that the resources go to those things that you feel are directly impacting the people that you're representing, and the interest of the people that you're representing. So I think a long answer, really long answer to your question is that I was like, I have the ability to somewhat try to create the change that I want to see, as much as of a cliche that is, and to do my part to make sure that Maine is a community that we can all thrive and be successful with our dignity, quite frankly. So.
I think you basically answered the question that I actually asked. But when it comes to education, including resources around mental health, substance use disorder, where do you think young people fit in? What do you think young people can do in order to help?
They're sitting at the forefront, quite frankly, and they should be sitting at the forefront. I think, as someone who is very much one of the youngest people in the state house, I think it becomes quite obvious to me in the discourse that occurs around me within my colleagues, and not all of them, but a good number of them will look at you and often scoff at the thought that you're young. You can't possibly know pain, or you can't possibly know what the lack of resources does to people. And I'm like, because I am young, I have pretty close proximity to pain, quite frankly, or proximity to what a lack of resources does to community, right? I live in downtown Lewiston. I don't need a textbook. I don't need the media to tell me what unhoused young people look like. I get to see them on my way, I see them, and I see their humanity and their dignity being questioned on a daily basis. So I think they sit at the forefront. I think we should be in consultation with them. We should be asking, hey, where do you think you need the most support in right now, right? Is it a school at the developmental stages that they're going through? Is it extracurricular activity that they need to see happening? So they should be at the forefront. We should be asking them. Young people are the one who's going to pay the price when it comes to environmental consequences. We're going to be the one paying the price for overpriced homes and rental agreements that are just not in the favor of the tenants, right? So if there's anyone who understands the consequence and the impact that legislation is going to have on people, is young people.
If young people wanted to learn about what is on the ballot, and what issues, why are those issues important to them, or why those issues should be important to them, because I've heard a lot of youth say, I don't know what's going on, but it's not going to affect me, but it's going to affect them. So how is it going to affect them?
Absolutely. I think it depends entirely on what people hold personal, right? The things that they feel are the most impact, that will directly impact them. But the only way to get to know that is actually, one, understanding what are the things that you find really valuable. Is it education? Is it employment? What is it that housing? What's it that's important to you? And then narrowing it down from that and looking to what are your legislators saying about this. All of us are public figures, therefore all of our information is public. You can literally call your senator. And I think sometimes people forget, especially in places like the state of Maine, how rare that actually is. You can call Peggy and talk to her and be like, hey, I know that you are the chair of appropriation. What money, what resource is actually going to housing? What can you give me information about that, right? Kristen Kluter is it was part of leadership. You can call her and say, hey, what were some policies that you supported that impact education, right? You can call me, like, right? So you have a direct link to your representative. Take full advantage of that. Don't get complacent and assume that everybody has the best interest that serves you. So, and again, I can't answer why something should be important to someone. They have to be the ones able to come to that decision. The only way, but I will say that I think one of the only way to really truly get yourself to care about something is figuring out what do you care about and engaging into the capacity that you can. I am full aware that politics can be incredibly overwhelming. It's not everybody's cup of tea, and that is absolutely fine. However, like, sitting on the sideline is not an option for anyone, especially if you care about your community, if you care about the people in your own homes. Every single one of us knows somebody who needs some sort of service. For example, we know someone who is who's on the spectrum. We know someone who is unhoused. We know someone who struggles with mental health or substance use, and or we know these people. They're in our families, they're in our communities, and for us to not engage and not at least to, again, within the capacity that we can, I think that is a real disservice to yourself and to your community. Again, you don't have to be full on. I would like for them to be, but you don't have to. You don't have to be political junkie. Like, you don't need to do all that. However, is within, especially us as a Muslim, like, our faith encourages us to get engaged, to care about our neighbors, right? Like, and to show up for our communities in the way that we hope they would show up for us. So if nothing else, what do you get out of it? Yourself, so.
You had brought up that the presidential election is kind of like overtaking, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people don't usually care about local elections because they think, what difference is it going to make?
Yeah.
What is it going to do for us? Like, I don't see anything happening.
Yeah.
Why should people care about local elections?
I mean, that's it though, right? It's local.
Yeah.
So who you vote for in city council can determine the condition of your roads. It's as simple as that, right? Like, it's simple as that, but also nuanced as that. I just mentioned, like, Peggy is our senator. She was the chair of appropriation. Appropriation is the people who allocate resources, right? That resource directly goes back to your community, right? And that money that we're allocating to different agencies and different state departments and things of that nature, those are your tax money, right? That's not coming from a thin air. Like, that's a tax money, and you should be aware of where your hard-earned tax dollars are going to, right? So, right, the federal government's own thing, but the state level, like, we have a direct impact on all the things that is happening, and not engaged, to me, seems a little bit of like you have to care where your money's going. And you wouldn't be walking around like handing out dollars if you didn't know where it was going, right? It's sort of the similar concept to that. So local politics is that. It is direct impact to your community. So.
And what are you running for, and like, what even is that position? Like,
Yeah.
what do you do?
So on the state level, there's a few different things that people do, and one of the main thing people, when I'm knocking doors, and talking to people, one is to really genuinely understand the interest and some of the pressing issues for my district. So if I speak to someone who's an elderly person and they're talking about healthcare, for example, then that's a conversation I will have. And I think there will be time when I'm talking to someone, a teacher or an educator of different sector, and they'll be like, these are some of the things that are happening in our schools. Can you make sure that like a bill is brought in? So all legislators from all over Maine will come into the state of Maine and essentially introduce a legislation that says this is the issue that which I want to address. For example, when my first term, it's a bill that I hope to bring back, is the budget referendum, which basically encourages that our budget process is similar to that of our other other election process. Because right now, as it stands, as you may remember, our budget failed like 3 times, I believe it was.
Yeah.
So, for example, something like that. Sometimes we do things that are system edit, meaning that it already exists and we just need to edit it and make sure that it actually aligns with the interest of the people, so that it's not on a random Tuesday and people aren't aware of it. And other times is working on things like making sure that there's work development or working opportunity for seniors and juniors in high school, right? Or introducing bill that will enhance or add more support for folks with mental health. So it depends. So everybody comes in and does that. And then the other thing, the real work, quote unquote, the real work that happens is that we are all assigned to a committee. So I was in state local. I'm hoping to be on housing committee this term coming. And that's where all those bills that people are introducing actually get dissected and make sure that the language is okay, that no community is being harmed, and that it actually meets the need of the community that that's being discussed, and yada, yada, yada. So those are the 2 primary things, but legislators also get together and they exchange ideas and they talk about their own respective districts, because Aroostook County it's gonna have a different need than Lewiston, right? So, so those are the 2 areas really, is to bring legislation to have discussions, and then being on committees to make sure that those legislation actually go through and are actually what our communities need. So,
So for youth of color specifically, right? That want to engage but are afraid because they think, because for a long time politics was not made for people of color. The system as a whole has been built in a way where it's not built for us, right? So how can they get engaged and like start being a part of these spaces?
Yeah, I think it can be so daunting to try to figure out your space within large space like politics. But I think something that I was listening to something that former President Obama was saying recently is that everybody looks big and mighty until you start having conversation with them and you realize that we all have the human experience, right? Like we all experience joy, we all experience pain to a certain degree, right? Like some more than others, because there's a protective barriers, right? People with resources have protective barriers that protect them from large exposure of pain or whatever, right? So that is all to say that like a lot of the time we genuinely make people out to be bigger and more powerful they actually are, right? Than they actually are. So I think one of the things that I will say to young people, especially young Black youth, is that you have the right to be here. You have the right, and I'm meaning like you have the right to occupy whatever space you feel you can contribute to. And that's just not even politics. That's literally anywhere, in the CEO, in the boardroom, or being a farmer. Like wherever space that you feel that you have something to add to, you belong there. Right, you have the expertise to be there, and whatever you don't know, you learn. Because the people that are already in those positions have had to also learn. No one was born with the manual how to be a legislator. Like I'm learning as I'm going, right? As I am talking to people, and as I'm learning from the different policies and the things that have already existed, the things that we can do to better the lives of Mainers. So. To me, I think, right, there is self-imposed limitations that we have to recognize about ourselves. But there's also limitation that society will continue to tell us, oh, you don't belong here, you belong here. And what I would say is, look at them and says who? Yeah. Who has created that narrative for you? And I think the further question is, what are they benefiting from that narrative, right? And I think I've seen that more in this election cycle than ever before, where people are being convinced that they aren't worth showing up for themselves and their community by not voting. You're better off not voting. I'm like, says who? Why is that person telling you that? Right? Even if they're not explicitly being like you shouldn't vote, if the messaging is that, you should ask yourself, what does this person gain from me not showing up for myself or for my community for that matter, right? So like going back to answering your question, I think Black youth, one, ask your own self, like, what are your own self limitation that you're imposing on yourself? Two, what is the societal limitation, and can you reverse that the mirror and ask why are they doing that? And then three, talk to people who are already in those seats. Have conversation with them. I promise you, most of us are incredibly eager to talk to young people, especially, right? Like anyone who shows interest, I'm like, please, let's have a conversation, right? Like, have conversation with those people, and you will realize that like whatever you don't know, you will learn. You will learn, and there are plenty of good people who will show you the ropes and show you like all the things that already exist, and you may actually realize, oh, I want to create my own blueprint, quite frankly. So don't let anyone define where you belong and where you don't belong, right? Like just genuinely don't let them. So
Do you have any other things to let people know, especially with the election coming up on Tuesday?
yeah, Tuesday
Any
the 5th.
messaging?
No, I would just say please, you have 2 days
Yeah.
to essentially really like learn about what are some of the some of the things that matter to you. What do you hope? How do you want to see your community in 5-10 years from now, right? Legislation that are put in now, you won't see the an immediate impact.
Yeah.
And I think making decision on short-term goals is not an effective way to create a positive and sustainable solutions. There are some that you'll feel, but most of the times legislation take time to see the ramification of that. But the leaders we pick now will essentially dictate what kind of community we'll have in 5-10 years from now. So when you're making your decision, think about that. Like, even if you're not here and your siblings or younger siblings or your parents or your nieces or nephews, like when they are your age and older, like can they still have community? Can they still really genuinely afford to live in the neighborhoods that they want to live in?
Yeah.
Right?
And
So
if people want to ask you questions,
Yeah.
how can they reach out to you?
yeah, my email is pretty public,
Yeah.
but they can reach out through my email, or my number is also pretty public. So if you go to like main state legislator page, or even my own personal pages online, since there are a lot of youth who are probably on Instagram and other social media, you can reach me anywhere, and I will do my very best to respond as quickly as possible. So yeah.
She's really good at responding. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And guys, the election's on Tuesday.
November
Vote
5th.
November 5th. You can figure out where your polling location is. We're going to post all the polling locations on our Instagram. And please go out and vote. Tell your friend to go vote. Tell your parents to go vote. This is an important election and it affects you. So if you have any questions, please just DM us. Or if you want to reach out to any of the people, we can send you information. Like she said, it's me. It's very easy to get in touch with people.
Very much.
So thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.
Thank
Bye.
you.